Hello, everyone, and welcome. This week we have a different format. As promised, the one and only Dr. Edi Bilimoria will be here with us for a conversation coming right up. But remember, he's the author. He's the one who's compiled all of these ancient teachings in this 4-volume set, Unfolding Consciousness, exploring the living universe and the intelligent powers in nature and humans. So he's answering your questions, and we have a shout out with so much love to Stephen Colbert and the Colbert Questionnaire. Stand by for Dr. Edi Bilimoria.
Hello, Anne.
Hello, Eddie. Thank you. He's here.
Lovely to see you, and what a surprise to be invited. And I hope it'll be a wonderful surprise for you as well.
I am enjoying it. We've been everywhere, you guys. We went to Dartmouth today.
Yes, that's right.
And Totnes, and we're going to go to the Moors tomorrow. We've had a wonderful time, and he's just as amazing in person. I have met him before. We work a lot online together, and I spend a lot of his time with his stuff, as he knows. And just having him here, though, with us to answer your questions and be with us, this is a fantastic opportunity. And he dressed up. Look, everybody. He's all dressed up.
There's nothing to substitute the physical presence.
It's true.
And we talked a lot on Zoom, of course, but Zoom is two-dimensional.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like the physical presence. It's like having a music lesson on Zoom. You can't do that. It's like having healing on Zoom. I know a lot of people do when they get to know the healer, but in the best world, you need the energetic exchange with the person. And
it's
what
true.
could be better than talking
Nothing.
to you?
What's so incredible, you guys, is that we've spent so much time with Eddie's work, and here he sits. It's Eddie who put together this phenomenal 4-volume set. This is Unfolding Consciousness. He gave birth to it over 20 years.
Yes, that's right.
And they've heard me talk about it's not about you. He's ego-free. He's humble, and this is to serve humanity. These are the collection that I always sum up, that you've compiled it. It's synthesized, you've explained it. Can you, for them, really quick, how would you explain what this 4-volume set is in your own words?
Right. Very simply, the 4-volume set tries to achieve a couple of things. But firstly, to humbly acknowledge what science and the world of science and technology has given us, but also to fulfill the deficit that science and technology has left us with. In other words, a spiritual vacuum. Science gives us just about, and technology, everything we want to have, but does it tell us what we should be living for? I don't think it does. So we're left with this sense of purposelessness in an increasingly mechanistic and technological age. Whereas if we use that technology with wisdom and knowing who we truly are, then all that technology would serve mankind instead of being, well, let's face it, a bit of a mixed bag. A lot of it serves mankind splendidly, but a lot of it causes no end of injury, pollution, and desecration.
Very well said. It is such an honor to have you here, honey. I've been asking them to send in their questions, and some of them have, but I wanted to start off, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's called the Colbert Questionnaire, and this is designed by Stephen Colbert in America. He's a late-night talk show host, and this is how he gets to know his guests in just a few questions. So once they answer this questionnaire, he says, you are truly known. So are you ready, Edi Bilimoria,
Yes,
to take the Colbert Questionnaire? Are you?
Colbert Questionnaire.
Colbert Questionnaire.
Right, I'm ready.
Okay.
If the Colbert Questionnaire is ready for me.
I think it is.
Thank
but
you.
remember, no answer is wrong, and it doesn't have to be convoluted or long.
No,
just
no.
whatever the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay, here we go. What is the one thing that you own that you should probably throw out?
Yes. Your little sense of ego.
Oh,
It's not it's a little sense, but for some people it's a huge monolithic block that stops them moving forward in their life. So let me put it this way, that if someone said, how do I grow spiritually and in every sense, I would say, In order to realize your grand self, you have to know your little self. And your little self is your identification with my knowledge, my house, my body, my this, my that. I know best and you don't. So to rise to your greater self, be aware of your little self and jettison it.
And you've told me before, though, to have you need the ego. It serves a purpose.
Yes.
Can you tell us what is that
Yes,
purpose?
I'll give you a very good example. Napoleon and Beethoven, they might sound a bit of a odd combination, but don't forget that Beethoven hugely admired Napoleon at one time before Napoleon crowned himself emperor. And then Beethoven, in an absolute fury, scratched out the dedication to Napoleon in his Third Symphony, the Eroica, and said, now he will just trample on men just like all the others. Now, the point is this. The ego is the servant, not the master. It is very important to have a strong ego. But who is the ego serving? In Napoleon's case, using this example, the ego was serving the emperor's sense of kingship, of dominion, of domination, of wanting to be the greatest man in Europe, and all of that sort of thing. In Beethoven's case, before his illnesses and his deafness increasingly took hold of him, he had a pretty strong ego in the sense that he once wrote to a court official in Vienna, I'm not interested, I'm paraphrasing, in your ethics. For me, power is the most important, and that is what drives men. The sense of power. But then he was able to turn his ego around, meaning instead of ego serving self, ego served his mission in life, his lifelong mission in life, which was music, of course. And the powerful ego was used as a faithful and strong servant to carry out the wishes of its master.
So it does have a purpose. It has
The
a
ego
purpose.
has a supreme purpose. It's what we do with it. So it's nonsense to say throughout the ego, when people say in the spiritual books, say be egoless, it means don't let the ego serve you, let the ego serve your mission. Because as I said in the simplest terms, you can't have a master without someone to carry out its wishes. You can't pull a carriage without the horses to pull it along, but the carriage and the horses needs a charioteer to guide it along the right path. The desires and the thoughts as the horses that have to be guided and driven by you, the higher self, the master.
That is fantastic. Thank you. Brilliant answer. Thank you. Okay, the next question is again about you. What's your favorite sandwich?
My favorite sandwich is, I once heard of the term an esoteric sandwich. And that means the esoteric wisdom, but you just can't have it like a sandwich without two slices of bread on either side. So it needs the exoteric, the outer, just to contain it. So my favorite sandwich is an esoteric sandwich.
I love this so much. This is brilliant. Thank you.
The exoteric is just the outward, the outer skin, so to speak, the outer manifestation of that which is hidden. And just as the filling of the sandwich is sort of hidden, you can see it between the slices of bread, but it's hidden. But you need the exoteric to hide it.
You guys, I know that Stephen Colbert has never had answers like these before. So here we go. We got some more. Thank you, Eddie, for answering the way you are. Okay, what is the scariest animal on the planet?
Human beings. Some human beings. Some human beings. Mm-hmm. And I mean that in all sincerity. Mm-hmm. We needn't go into names, of course, but I would like to remind everyone that this whole idea of original sin is taken to stupid, ridiculous extremes. The great sage Ramana Maharshi, arguably the last of the mighty line of India's rishis, he said that you are not weak in your true self. In your real true self, you are strong. What is weak and evil are your habits and your thoughts, but not you in your true self. So, but in that sense, the human being is most certainly, some human beings, the most destructive and violent creature on earth, but also the most saintly, the most sublime, and the most beautiful.
That is a perfect answer. And you'd be surprised how many times I've asked these questions. Very rarely has anybody said human being. That is my answer as well. Human being, that is we are the scariest animal. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, apples or oranges, Eddie? What's your favorite? Apples or oranges?
Apple oranges.
So a combination of both?
Yes.
You're not going to pick either or?
No, because they're both fruit. Yeah. And they're both using the example of the perennial wisdom. Apples and oranges grow on trees, don't they? I think so, yes.
Yes, they do. Yeah, they do.
Oranges do, certainly.
Yeah, apples do too.
But the idea of perennialism is a tree that always produces the same fruit, but not the same kind of fruit. So every apple on the apple tree will be different. And the apple will fall off the tree, but the tree will always renew its fruit. So the orange tree will also renew its fruit. The wonderful thing about an apple is if you slice it along its hemisphere, you see 5 stars, 5 seeds.
In the middle, the seeds.
Yeah.
Oh, I never really paid attention to that.
I've never managed to do that with an orange.
Oh, well, there's always, the day is young. So we'll see. Yeah. Thank you for your very honest.
I'm trying to see the hidden meaning behind that question.
I think you are. I love the way you're answering these. No one else does it like that.
Right.
Okay, so we have a few more, and then we have your questions. So the next question is, have you ever asked someone for their autograph, Eddie?
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh, I love those days. Before credit cards and all the complexity of online, I used to queue very often outside the box office of London's Royal Festival Hall to get the best possible seats in the house for great artists like Arthur Rubinstein and Vladimir Horowitz, Herbert von Karajan, Michelangelo. And after the concert, we would all rush backstage and ask for their autographs. And I can distinctly remember the feeling of joy shaking hands with such great people.
Oh, wow.
Daniel Barenboim, Yehudi Menuhin, I can name many. I've only asked great artists for their autograph. I mean, you don't go up after a lecture to someone and say, can I have your autograph? An author of a book, yes, they have very kindly signed their books for me, but it's not an autograph in that sense. It's a book signing.
Really. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, so most certainly.
And do you still have these autographs?
Oh, yes, I framed Arthur Rubinstein, and I framed Vladimir Horowitz and Daniel Barenboim on my piano. And they mean a lot to me. They're like a sort of antenna that directs me to the sheer greatness of these people.
I love this so much. These are my favorite. Okay, thank you for that, Eddie. Okay, this is one that a lot of people get stumped on, but I know you won't. And I know that this is actually, his answer is in here, but the question is, succinctly, what happens when we die, Edi Bilimoria? Succinctly.
Well, I belong to the Scientific and Medical Network, which is a wonderful international and truly global international network of seekers and resonant souls, if I can put it that way, who fully acknowledge, as I said earlier almost, the contribution of science, sincerely acknowledge, but realize there is more to just materialistic science. So our flagship conferences are known as mystics and scientists, putting the two sides together beyond the brain. And whenever one of our ranks dies in the scientific, we say they have been promoted.
Love it.
So when you die, you're promoted.
I love it.
So the best analogy with death is sleep. The death is sleep. So there are various processes that one goes through in the dying process, remembering that consciousness never dies. Consciousness seeks new forms in just the same way as water is always H2O, whether you can freeze it and touch it like ice or drown in it like liquid water or steam, it is still H2O. So H2O here in this analogy is consciousness, which after the death of the physical body, the mortal coil is of course sloughed off, shed off, as the saying goes, and that is truly mortal. It's ground to dust or the ashes. But then there is not just the mortal body, there are the subtle bodies, the psychic bodies, for want of a better term. And after shedding the mortal body, one exists in what's known in the Eastern Sanskrit term as Kamarupa, which is the desire vehicle, the psychic vehicle. And in that realm, which is known in Christianity as purgatory or purgatoria or Kamaloka in Sanskrit, it is like being in a school classroom where you are faced with the results of your own homework. So you are there experiencing life inside out. So what you have done to people, you are now experiencing from the inside out point of view. So as though it's happened to you. And that's everything good, of course, not everything injurious. So that process takes us along as the energies that have been put into energizing that psychic vehicle. And when those energies are finally exhausted, then the true self, the individuality, exists in what's known as Devachan, which is the land of the gods, very loosely mistranslated in Christianity as heaven, which is not a eternal state at all, but it is a condition where the higher self has an opportunity to dwell upon everything of a spiritual nature that it aspired to but did not achieve during life. So it's a time where the rough diamonds that were polished during life are polished, so to speak, in this higher realm, to be again put into practice during the next incarnation, or whichever incarnation one chooses to come down into, meaning into the terrestrial realm. So death is transition, it is not extinction by any means. And there's so much scientific evidence, clinical evidence, to show the continuity of consciousness, that consciousness is not generated by the brain. Consciousness works through the brain, using the brain, but it's not generated by the brain. In just the same way as the tiger on your television, the television does not generate the tiger, it transmits the signals from the broadcasting station such that there is a visual image and sound of a tiger.
Love that. Thank you so much. He's touching on death is transition, time at the door of eternity. We just wrapped that up. If you'd like to know more, we covered that. Yeah. That is from volume 2. That is chapter 5. So far, my very favorite chapter. There's so many of them, though. Yeah. But that was a brilliant answer. And yes, remember, if you're interested in what you're hearing, all of it's in here. And then what's not in here, Edi points to. He has references to the original teachings, all of these quotes and everything we talk about in here. Everything. This is just a little taster session because we're getting to know the author and have him answer your questions. But what a powerful answer. Who else could we ask? What happens when we die? Where would we possibly get a better answer than what Edi's been able to give us? Just a tiny bit. There's so much more where that came from. But we're going to keep going so we can get to know Edi. So, Edi, what is your favorite movie?
I rarely go to movies, and I'll tell you why. when I was about, I think, 22, 23, I went to the Metro Cinema in Bombay and I saw Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho.
Oh.
And if you were to ask me what's been my most horrible experience in life, it was that.
Oh, we can say that. What's your most horrible experience?
That
really?
movie.
The
yes,
movie?
serious. Yes,
Really?
yeah. It affected me so. I realized then. Well, we all talk about not eating junk food, and no sensible person would eat food from the gutters. Mm-hmm. But we fill our minds and eyes and our ears with junk. And I would class horror movies and anything horrible that we entertain ourselves on as toxic junk. So from that moment onwards, I backed off movies because and other movies, of course, that are full of stories of human suffering and infidelity, all on a background of palatial, majestic surroundings. You know, the typical, I hate to say, not American, Bollywood movie where a couple in palatial, majestic surroundings, marble swimming pool and all, having an affair with someone else, the usual. So I do not like to see and entertain myself on stories of human unhappiness. There's enough human unhappiness.
Yes.
Right, my favourite movie, I was very fond of The Sound of Music. And I liked Ben-Hur very much. Well, the chariot racing was tremendous. But there was a deep message there. And The Sound of Music, yes, I will say that was one of my favourites.
Oh, beautiful.
That's going back a while. Before that, My Fair Lady.
Oh, really? Oh, that's sweet. We can peek inside your psyche.
I'm hardly an expert on movies.
Well, I was
as
going
you gathered.
No, I think, well, you like to keep it simple. And I did want to ask about the violence and the gore in Psycho, which was really one of the first trailblazers there. But as far as Ben-Hur goes, I was in Ben-Hur last year in theater, and I played Simonides. I'm interested when you say the message in Ben-Hur. You said there was a message.
There was a message of courage and heroism, and how the valor and courage of Ben-Hur surmounted the infidelity and deviousness of Masala, who is his great childhood friend.
Yes, they were together, and then they became mortal enemies.
Yes, they became mortal enemies, and how when his daughter in the film dropped a tile from the house, that was used as an excuse to have him incarcerated and a galley slave.
Yeah, galley slave. But you think about what that was like. Horrible
But
existence.
you were fed well.
Were you fed well as galley
so
slave?
that you could row well.
So that's like putting gas in the tank.
Do you remember there was he was told row well and live, or something like that.
Interesting. We wanted to cover, which is now quite rampant and much, much more severe than what was happening when Alfred Hitchcock was making Psycho, when they used chocolate for the blood going down the drain, the chocolate syrup.
Really?
Yes, that's what that was, is Hershey's chocolate.
And you know, the screaming was not screaming, it was, I heard Daniel Barenboim saying this, it was violence playing at a very high pitch.
Oh, yes, that makes sense. That's right, right.
It wasn't...
Was it the violence that jarred you or scarred you from, or was it the darkness of the film itself?
It was the whole darkness, the violence, and the fact that it wasn't the fantasy. You see, if you had a fantasy film with monsters and witches and all that, you know it's fantasy, but he made it so real and true to life.
Oh, yes.
That you're going to this motel and you meet this demon of a guy who murders you in your shower and
has his dead mother in the attic. That's true, but it is more frightening when you have a real life.
True to life.
Yes.
And I feel that Alfred Hitchcock and others really were able to draw on the darkness from the astral realms, for want of a better word, the astral realms, the realms of consciousness next to the physical. But the astral realms has many grades, many grades, by no means dark. It's an infinite graded realm, let's say, but he drew on the darkest realms and vivified it.
And made it real. We were talking about this last night. Stephen King, I also mentioned
Yes,
to
you
Eddie.
mentioned
Stephen seems to have an absolute direct line that feeds from the astral
Yeah.
because of the brilliance in the horror. But you say to stay away from them because does it affect us?
Yes,
It does
yes.
affect junk.
And of course, the great artists, painters, poets draw from the highest realms of the astral
I love
as
that.
well.
Beautiful answers, honey.
Yes,
Thank
stay
you.
away, not because we are escapists, but if you saw a mad dog on the street, would you confront it? I mean, it's just common sense. You stay away from toxicity. You stay away from that which harms and degrades you.
That's very brilliant advice.
I mean,
Thank you.
that is just sheer common sense. You don't entertain yourself on that which is toxic. And, people go on and on, why is there so much violence in the world? Well, look what you're entertaining yourself on.
It's a very good point.
Start with that.
Very good point. Thank you, Edi Bilimoria.
You eat rubbish, you become rubbish.
That's true. You are what you eat. You're building your body from that. And so far, we've been able to take, with our computers, we've been able to take the gore to a level that is far beyond what can even happen in real life. And it's so horrific. We're getting numb to it. And that's, anyway, we could talk about that forever.
I didn't know about chocolate.
Oh, yeah, it was chocolate syrup, Hershey syrup. Remember, I was a tour guide at Universal Studios, so we talked about we drove by the Psycho House, which was this false front. And anyway, it's still there on the lot. Okay, your favorite smell?
My favorite smell, I'll tell you something. When I was working in France, I would go to the railway station Saint-Quentin-en-Yvelines on the way to the office and passing a croissant.
Oh,
coffee
really?
shop.
A fresh, hot?
Yes, and the smell of fresh croissant.
Oh, that sounds heavenly. You had one today.
Yeah, I
didn't
know
you?
it did.
Did it taste good? Was it good?
It was wonderful.
Okay.
So the smell of fresh croissant amplified with freshly ground coffee.
Oh.
But I also like I love the smell of freshly ground pepper.
Oh, wow, really? Okay,
Yeah.
so ground pepper.
They called me Monsieur Poivre, Le Poivre.
What does that mean? The pepper
pepper.
guy? Oh, really?
The pepper guy
Is that
in
what they
France.
called you?
Yeah.
And do you have a lot of pepper on your food?
Yes.
Really? Okay, well, I've got some
Yes.
fresh
My
ground.
favourite restaurant in Godalming, in near Guildford, where I live, is called the Withies, where I did a lot of my writing. And they always know I want pepper in my soup, and they bring a large pepper mill.
Oh, wow. Okay, good. That's good to know. We're getting to know Edi Bilimoria, Dr. Edi Bilimoria, author of Unfolding Consciousness, Exploring the Living Universe and the Intelligent Powers. In
And it is a living universe.
It is. It is alive. It is alive, and we're going to talk about that. One of you has a question on consciousness, which actually covers that, which is all. But anyway, next question is least favorite smell, Eddie. Your least favorite smell. There's
do you
many to
think?
choose from. I would imagine I could fill
What
in
do
the
you
blank.
think?
Okay, so we're just going to fill in the blank.
You fill in the dots.
Okay, you sure? Because that's going to leave us with our imagination.
Yes, but I was mentioning to you earlier when we were walking along the Dartmouth River that some people are wonderful people, but I need to keep about 3 or 4 feet distance from them
I
for
understand.
obvious reasons. So that's a least favourite smell as well.
Okay, we'll put that in our little repertoire.
Yeah, join
there.
the dots.
Okay. All right. How about, do you have hope for humanity?
Yes, I do. Most certainly. It's a long-term hope, not a short-term hope.
So we would say in our lifetimes, a lot of people think, only in my lifetime we'll see this. I don't think
We
that.
have
I think
to
it's going
regard
to be much longer.
humanity as a state of consciousness. There is the mineral kingdom, below the mineral, of course, the plant, the animal, and the human. It's important to regard humanity as a phase state, as a particular phase of consciousness. And humanity is not the pinnacle by any means of evolutionary development. It is the greatest human beings are at the highest point of the human state. before they evolve further into the superhuman state, known as Nirmanakayas and Bodhisattvas and that kind of thing. So I think human beings are not so much in charge of their destiny as they would arrogantly like to think. I do believe that there are high influences that are guarding humanity, but only guarding humanity to the extent that humanity won't completely self-destruct. That they can't possibly intervene in all the stupidities we get into. So I do really feel that there will be a lot of self-engineered destruction through our own utter stupidity. But there has to be a phoenix to emerge out of that. And all the great teachings talk about the sixth root race, and the latest, one of the latest, is the Bulgarian sage Peter Dunov, who talked about the sixth root race and about the beauty and the intelligence of human beings then. But before that, a lot of destruction. And we hear about the destruction of Atlantis, we hear about the destruction of other continents. So there is hope for humanity, but not for a lot of human beings, sadly.
That's true. And remember when he says not immediate, but in the end, in the end.
It's difficult to say in the end, but even the great Sir Isaac Newton predicted, based on his incredible understanding of biblical prophecy, something like 2050, 2060 as the ending, but not the ending of the human race, the ending of a particular phase of humanity.
That sounds actually hopeful, because what we've been doing so far, we could always improve. And so if there's a different phase,
but
possibly.
There's absolutely nothing to say we can't improve on it.
Absolutely, and that's what we're doing here.
It's not fatal. It's self-engineered stupidity that, if not checked, will lead in that direction.
And by looking within yourself, you said something so brilliant yesterday. I don't know if we can recall that immediately. You're talking about the application of it. Once you change you change. How did you say that?
Yes, I was talking to a lovely lady who was just coming out of Dartington Hall from a festival where they were sincerely talking about political change, climate change, changing society for the better. And I just casually remarked that that's highly commendable, but unless you change yourself, what you will change will only be a reflection of yourself. And I like to use the analogy of a warring couple in the house, say, and if they say, well, we're at each other's throats, let's leave this house, let's start a new life, let's emigrate to Australia, or buy a new house, all the rest of it, and do all that. Okay, and they do all that, and then what happens? After the euphoria of that, they still start fighting. Why? Because they haven't changed. All they've done is they're changing the outer structures. And 99.99% of people, politicians, think that by changing outer structures, you will make a difference. You will not. The inner structure has to change. And this is something that the great sages have always said. Gandhi said, be the change yourself you want to see in the outer world. So changing economic structures, business models will do nothing if you have not changed, because you will use those new structures in the same stupid mindset of the old structure. In the same way you start fighting in your new house like you were fighting in your old house.
Because nothing changed
but
here.
But if the structure is genuinely in need of renovation, then by all means change it. If your house is full of rats and vermin, of course you need to change your house. You know, that's the reason for your unhappiness. Fine. But rarely is the outer structure the cause of unhappiness. It is the manifestation of unhappiness.
True. Oh my goodness. Thank you guys for being here. We've still got some more. I'm going to get to your questions too. What is the most used app on your phone? Do you use apps on your phone?
I try and minimize my involvement with IT. But can you name me a few apps?
Facebook, YouTube, you have BBC News. And, I'm trying to think of my own. We have Instagram. You do have an Instagram, and some of these people are following you.
Well, thanks to Anne, I've warmed much more to Facebook, because I've always said that technology is to be used wisely or unwisely. There's nothing wrong with social media. I mean, just because it's completely misused has nothing to do with the technology per se. No, I wouldn't say those are the most used apps.
It's TikTok, isn't it?
Go on, say.
I'm trying to think.
More.
Oh, you've got your HSBC app, or any of your banking app, your
no,
news.
I don't have an app on my mobile phone for banking.
How about news? Do you watch the
news?
No,
I watch it on my laptop.
Okay, laptop.
So you can call that an app.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, sure, all right, so really not an app guy.
No, I'm not an app guy.
That's okay.
But I certainly watch all your Facebooks. So
well, a lot of my
I'm
Facebook
a second-hand app guy.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I tend to... I tend to bask in the sunshine of other people's apps.
Well,
because I'm so useless on IT.
Oh my God! I think you probably just got a lot of other things going on. That's all.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I do like the fact that you keep your plate clean, meaning you're not inviting in any of the rubbish that is out there. Because he also doesn't have a television. There's no television in this house. But Eddie hasn't had a TV in his house all of his life.
I've never had a TV in my house.
Ever.
I've never tried to make a point. I just never have had a TV. But if someone who invites me or whatever, somewhere else, has a TV, I will very gladly share a program with them. And when I was with my parents, I used to love watching Wimbledon when Wimbledon was a sport. Now it's just smash and grab and big business. There's very little feeling of sport. I do like watching nature programs very much, the Attenborough nature programs.
Yes.
But if it's there and interesting, yes, I'll watch it. But I'm not yearning for it.
And he listened to the coronation. He listened
I
to it
listened
on the radio.
To the coronation, yes, exactly. And the music was beautiful.
Oh, I love that. Okay, what number am I thinking of?
You're thinking of number 7.
Oh, it's close, but that's not it. Okay.
5.
No,
1.
Keep going. No.
0.
67.
67? All right.
It's just a little thing that Stephen
adds
does.
Up to 4.
But that's true. That's true. Okay.
Right.
What one song that you'd like to listen to for the rest of your life? You can only have
Schubert's
one.
Ave Maria.
Did you hear how fast he answered that? Did you hear that?
Schubert's Ave Maria.
It's absolute. Yeah.
If I had to, yes.
Okay.
The other one is the Lindenbaum, Under the Linden Tree by Schubert.
Oh.
The other one would be Beethoven's An die ferne Geliebte, To the Distant Beloved. There's so many of them.
I love it. Okay, well, you're in good hands then for the rest of your life listening to that song. That's not bad. Or those songs. And then
the Ave Maria is the outpouring of Schubert's understanding of the power of healing and the power of love in just 2 pages of sublime music.
Did you want to tell them the story of Ave Maria?
Yes, most certainly. The story of Ave Maria is Schubert was, who died at the age of 31, by the way, is the story of Sir Walter Scott's Lady of the Lake. And in this particular song, a young maiden spies a nobleman grievously injured on the shores of Lake Katrina and asks him, what happened, and he was badly wounded in battle. So the maiden says, well, look, come with me to my father's castle and we look after you. And little did she realize that the nobleman was none other than King James, who was the mortal enemy of her own father, Clan Douglas. There was the feud in Scotland between Douglas and James, of course. And to soothe away his sorrow and his battle wounds and the pain of all that, the maiden sings Ave Maria to the nobleman.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for that. Thank you. Okay, this one is. I'm sure you're gonna nail this. Here we go. Describe the rest of your life, Edi Bilimoria, in 5 words.
Work, 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 work.
Work, is it? All the way to the end.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I love that. And this is the type of work you're talking
Yes, it
about.
is. Yes, it is. Yes.
And I've asked him, and I've asked you guys as well, when I talk about this crushing compassion, this empathy, this
It's a lovely
responsibility.
term, crushing compassion.
Is it? Really? I always thought we talked a lot last night, and I talked about this. Did you feel this, what is it? Why? Why did you write this? Why did you write this book? And that's a good question. We can start your questions off with that. Thank you, by the way. As far as the Colbert Questionnaire is
No,
concerned.
that's just Colbert.
That's just Colbert, and you are known now, Eddie. We now know Edi Bilimoria. Thank you for playing with that. Now we're going to get to their questions, but really quick.
Yeah.
This 4-volume set that is a part of our Sundays, every Sunday we do these book studies. This is a powerful text. This is something I believe that is one of the most important works of our time. And I've called it the secret teachings of all ages for the new millennium. But it is so much more than just that. So why did you write Unfolding Consciousness, Eddie?
Why does a rose emit perfume? Why does a flower bloom? Why does a poet write poetry? Why does a composer write music? Because he has to. The love of doing it. They obviously are secondary reasons. Every artist writes to a commission that's only sensible in order to live in life. And for a poverty-stricken artist to earn some money, but it was really an outpouring of what I felt I should be doing. But the secondary reason really is to clarify a lot of the confusion that exists in esoteric circles, and also, if I may say, in the Theosophical Society. My
please.
third equal reason is always to point to the universality of all the teachings, and to show that when stripped of their man-made priestcraft and human egotism, all of these teachings can be taken back to their source and shown to emanate from one central pool of wisdom. But to put that together by drawing on all the great teachings and showing their point of origin.
That is a fantastic answer. And did you know that it would be this long?
Not initially, no, I didn't know it was going to be that long, and I once said more than once to a friend, if I knew it was going to be that heavy, I wouldn't have written 4 volumes. We're talking of 5.2 kilos and well over 11 pounds. Yeah.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
And again, you also, some of the things you make concise and you say, if you want to know more, go here. So this is not all of it. This is some of it, but this is a huge collection of it. And that leads me to this first question, which is from Reverend Wayne Miller. He writes, he wants to know, over the long course of putting together this work, which is over 20 years, he wonders how often, if ever, did your perspectives on one or more topics covered in the book change?
Perspectives don't change as much as deepen. Especially your favorite chapter, Death is Transitional.
Love it.
I would say when I was writing it and rewriting and rewriting.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a deepening of perspective, and not so much a radical shift. So in that sense, was it Reverend?
It's Reverend Wayne Miller. I want to know if it changed. Well, you're studying it kind of as you're writing it, obviously.
Yes, and if you don't change or deepen in this sense, I use the word deepen for
Deepen
change.
is a good word.
Deepen and change. Then it's just a mechanical intellectual exercise. Yeah, I was increasingly given evidence of what I've always felt about the unity of the great teachings, and how all of them essentially convey a central message, but in different language to suit the different times and different people.
Brilliant, beautiful answer. Thank you again for your questions too, for Eddie. Another one is coming in. I want to thank Clark from Texas, who has written in, also Alan Forrest. One of them is saying, all is conscious, all is God. Is that true?
Yes, in one sense, all is God, but then you have to be very careful about what you mean by God. Do you mean the divine source? In chapter 2, actually, I've talked about the shifting of metaphysical terms, as I've called it. And you often hear in New Age circles, and not all New Age is superficial, don't ever get me wrong, oh, we are all spiritual beings, that's the end of it. And then whoever says that gets a warm round of applause. Yes, really, we are all spiritual beings, just look around you. So, if we start at the highest level, the word Brahma means breathe, to breathe out. So we are all emanated, the divine breath has emanated, all of us. But does that mean that Mozart and Beethoven and Hitler and all the nasty, ghastly people are all spiritual beings? No, it doesn't. So one has to be very careful about distinguishing levels of being. So that which starts out pure and beautiful does not necessarily end up pure and beautiful because we make a mess of it. So it's all fine to say all is God, but it's not saying anything at all. One might as well say all music is sonorous air. All music is sonorous air, but it's saying nothing and it's saying everything.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I got that.
The divine breath can be very sweet or it can stink.
That's a very accurate description. Absolutely.
Literally, yeah.
What about consciousness? Is everything conscious?
Yes, definitely. Everything is conscious at its own level. The great Newton in his Alchemy said even a stone has soul and spirit, and that's something for Newton to say in his Alchemy. By conscious, what we mean is this, that at the center, literally every speck and particle of matter, there is spirit, using the term in a general sense. There is that spark which is eternal completely and never extinguished. And any system and any organization that tries to deny its existence will only have a limited period on Earth. And I'm thinking of totalitarian states and highly atheistic regimes that will last a certain time, but have their time not very long, in my opinion. Because by denying the existence of spirit eternal, they are, in a sense, counteracting the very raison d'etre of their being.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you for your questions, Clark and Alan. And this one is coming in from about Saint Germain. Yeah. And the question is, was he a real person?
Now, what do you mean by a real person? The adepts, the rishis were all real people, but they were much more than just human beings in the flesh. They were enlightened beings. I believe they were real human beings. They were not just disembodied spirits, if that's what the question is.
That's a good answer.
Yes, they were not just disembodied spirits. But they had such a capacity that they could be in more than one place at one time.
Their astral abilities,
they exactly,
were... Okay.
Yeah. They were certainly human, which is why they interacted in human society. They were certainly human at the highest echelons of humanity. Yeah.
And they're helpers, and they're coming back to help elder brothers of humanity. What would you call them?
I would call them the saviors and healers of humanity, yes.
They're here to help.
And their task is to elevate consciousness by concentrating on the highest and the good in humanity. There's never any talk of personal satisfaction or trying to appease personal yearnings or personal gain. It's always totally impersonal.
Yeah, it's not about one-on-one and about your own personal issues in your life.
It's not what I want, it's what I deserve and what I need to be.
Oh, that is brilliant, isn't it? Because it's all for a greater good.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for your questions, by the way. I really appreciate that because I've been asking them for weeks to send in these questions and they are playing along because they want to know more. This one is coming in about, do you believe that anybody today, the alchemists of today, now we've talked about alchemy and what it truly is, but listen to Edi's description of true alchemy.
Well, true alchemy is turning allegorically, of course, lead into gold, and the lead here is the selfishness and the personal base nature into the gold of the higher and altruistic and philanthropic nature. So I would say that alchemy always does exist. I don't personally know of actual alchemists who are practicing alchemy, so to speak, but in a more general sense, the mystic teachings, the teachings in the mystery schools, are all about alchemy in the sense of quickening the process from the base nature, from the basic nature, to the spiritual nature, and how this can be done most effectively is the true teaching in the mystery schools. But the great alchemists always emphasized transmutation with lead and gold as purely allegorical. That said, terrestrial alchemy is a fact that one can alchemically transmute terrestrial matter into more refined matter, but that was not their purpose mainly.
So in a way, as we're here studying this, applying this, this is alchemy. We are alchemists, are we not?
That's a very good way of putting it. We are trying to transmute.
Us, ourselves. It's not being done to anybody else. You can't do it to anybody else. No one can do it for you. It's you that takes these teachings and applies them. Remember, this isn't the only collection. These have been around since the beginning of time. This is a collection of them. It's not about Edi. It's not about me. Again, these videos and this subject, which is Theosophy or the perennial philosophy, is about you. And the alchemy is overcoming, transmuting your lower nature, your lower self.
Your personal lower self into the gold of the higher self.
Of the higher self, yeah, we talk about that. Thank you. That is a good question. I appreciate that. Thank you. Now, from Jonathan Douglas, he's writing in off of YouTube, and he says, many schools of thought seem to promote a sort of egoic martyrdom.
Yes.
And we touched on that a little bit earlier.
We did.
And he says, and I question the practicality of such extreme stoicism. So what are your thoughts on that?
Many schools, many systems, especially in India, advocate the mortification of the body, which is utterly stupid, completely inimical to the whole ethos and essence of the ancient wisdom. Torturing the body and maiming the body has absolutely nothing to do with gaining higher insight. The point is, anything can be polluted, distorted, and abused. And it's in the very nature of a higher teaching that it is highly prone to abuse. It's almost by definition. The more refined the teaching, the more it can be abused. A sacrifice is another example of just that. So there is never a question of destroying the ego. As we said earlier, it's a question of using the ego for self-transformation and serving the higher purpose of oneself. So what one is destroying is the hold of the ego on your own personal selfishness.
And getting it under control.
Controlling it. I always like to say turning it 180 degrees. Instead of pointing towards you, you're turning it 180 degrees and pointing it outwards.
That is brilliant.
To serve.
Oh my God, that is brilliant. I need to put that in a TikTok. That is
so
awesome.
Sacrifice is another.
Yes.
These ghastly rituals you hear about with sacrificing human beings and animals and bulls. No one puts it better than Manly Hall in his Secret Teaching of the Ages, that when the higher wisdom degenerated, as inevitably it does, they didn't realize that you're not sacrificing a poor, unoffending bull. You're sacrificing the bull nature within yourself. In other words, your obstinacy, your rage, your uncontrollable passions. That's what you're sacrificing.
The beastly nature inside all of us.
Yeah.
That
So
is
the
brilliant.
poor animal
Yes.
has nothing to do with appeasing the gods.
Oh my God.
You appease the gods by sacrificing your own base nature on the fire, on the altar. And the altar here is the fire of your mind and intelligence
Oh my
that
God.
burns up the dross.
That is so brilliantly explained. Look how we've got it wrong for so long.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And we did have a question about that. Somebody did ask about animal sacrifice, and you covered that. And then I think he was asking about just the appeasing the gods. And anyway, we did cover that. Thank you for that question. And we're going to wrap it up because we've already come up to an hour. Can you believe it?
Fine.
An hour. We have, again, this is Jay Douglas is asking this question. The importance of Christ consciousness in spiritual evolution. And I'll leave that with you for our final question.
Yes,
Edi
it is
Bilimoria.
supremely important. The Christ consciousness refers to the spiritual soul, which is the divine spiritual soul in every person. So it's a great shame that people equate Christ with Jesus the man. Jesus the man, certainly in my consideration, had the Christ consciousness. But the Christ consciousness is that consciousness of the spiritual soul, which in the Buddhists they refer to as Avalokiteshvara. There are other words for the Christ consciousness. Krishna is the same origin as the word Christ. So Krishna consciousness is Christ consciousness. The sooner the Orthodox Christians get away from identification with the man Jesus and put the emphasis on the consciousness of the Christ, and realizing that the Christ consciousness is the aspiration of every human being to operate from that highest point of the highest center of consciousness, known as the Christ consciousness or the spiritual soul. In that sense, it is supremely important.
Thank
And
you.
a lot of people are severed from that connection, unfortunately.
That's true. We talked about
Totally severed, but that's another...
that. Is that when we talked about Avicii and the...
Yes,
Yes.
that's to
eighth
do with the Antakarana.
Yes,
Yeah,
remember that? We
yeah.
talked about that.
Yeah.
If you are enjoying this, and I'm sure that you are, remember every week we do a little book study on Edi's book here. I read it to you. He also has the references that are pointing towards Newton, towards Einstein, towards Blavatsky, towards Paul Brunton, all of them. And it's in this text. Now, it's going to be out very soon, if not this week. The ebooks, I keep telling them are
Yeah,
coming.
yeah.
Can you please tell them the ebooks are coming because they don't believe?
The ebooks are indeed coming. We're sort of cogitating over the covers, if I can put it that
That's
way.
where we're at, yes,
Yeah,
with the covers.
yeah.
But when they are out, they will be ready all over the world. And because this is a great thing to have in your library. This is a hardback. You've got the pictures, and you've got, these are beautiful colored things to have in your library, reference manuals. But for everybody to have access to them, the ebooks have been necessary, and they're on the way. We have audiobooks are on the way as well. Condensed versions of these
Yeah.
are on the way. And this just came out last year in May of 2022. And then we started doing these book studies, and then you'll see Edi popping up on other YouTube channels, just sharing this message of, again, the exploring the living universe and the intelligent powers in nature and humans. This is, to me, one of the most important texts of our time. And that's why I suit up and show up here every week to be with you. And it is such an honor to have you.
you.
Actually, look, I'm touching him.
Thank you.
I'm touching
Yeah,
him. I know, it's
Yeah.
so wonderful.
So I'm also a human being.
He is a human
Like,
being. And here we
on
sit
a lesser
together.
level
Aw.
than Constant Germain.
Well, I don't know. I think
Yeah.
what you're
Thank
doing
you.
is obviously you're serving humanity. You're here to serve. This is not to make money. This is to get these out into the world. It'd be great if they were self-supporting. They're not yet doing that, but to get them out into the world. So once you get a hold of them and you recognize them and you apply them, your life can change. And it's not about, again, Edi didn't come up with what's in this book. These are the perennial philosophy, the eternal, the ageless wisdom, the timeless truths.
Yes, I'm the messenger.
Yeah, a messenger. He's
Yes,
written
yes.
some down, and I'm here to talk to you about them. I share them with you. I'm a student as well. By sharing them, I get a chance to apply them as well. I learn something every time I sit down here with you, and
Thank
I'm
you, Anne.
so grateful
Yeah.
for you. Thank you for being here, everyone. I love you, and I will see you again next week. Eddie, will you come down every week to be here with us?
I will do that, most certainly. I will be with you
Every week?
In spirit, soul,
okay.
and astral body.
Astral body, it's fine.
And physical body.
Oh, thank you, everybody. Mwah, I
Thank you
love
very
you.
much.
And we'll see you next week. I love you guys. Bye-bye.